volume and efficiency than producing a quality product, this was the perfect answer to McDonald's speedy service system.
Alright, so the first thing that you want to do is go to effects right over here and drag in a fusion composition, and you want to make the length 6 seconds and 5 milliseconds long. Once you did that, just right click on the fusion composition, open in fusion page, and there are quite a lot of nodes in here, but I'm going to break it down one by one so you guys can recreate this exactly. So we're going to start off over here with our background node. So if you guys don't know how to add nodes, all you do is click Control Space on your keyboard and type in whatever node. In this case, it's background node, so you just click on it and click add, and then over here I added the Burger King. So it's basically this background over here in the back, and then I added a transform node, connected it, and then I added a color correction, a merge node, and a background, and then I made this background a gradient. So this is basically an overlay for the background to kind of add some extra color correction onto it. So as you can see, if I remove the background, that's what the background is, and then if I re-add it, it's that. And then the merge 2 connects to the merge 1, because if you connect the background to the merge, it messes up and it doesn't really work out that good. So you just want to make sure it's connected like this. Okay, so I'll explain what I did in this section. So for the Burger King, the global in and out is 0 because it's the background, and then global out, it doesn't really matter. You want it to last throughout the whole clip, so just make it anything more than the fusion composition. So I just left it at the original thing, 892, and then trim 0, 892. The global in and out is basically where the clip starts and what frame the clip ends. And then process mode for frames, media source, media pool, all the default settings. And then I didn't adjust the transform. Color correction I did adjust for the background once again. So you guys can copy these settings if you want. Pause the video, copy the settings. And yeah, that's all I did for the background. And then for the old man, global in and out, so it starts at frame 0, and then it ends at whatever. I just left it at the default. And then I added a transform node to connect it so I can animate it. So over here, let me just go to where I started it. Okay, right over here, let me just zoom it in for you. So what I did over here, I started the animation over here. Okay, so at frame 0, it's just automatically there. Alright, and then I go to frame number 154, and then I keyframe the X and Y center as well as the size. Okay, and then I go to frame 260, and then I move the X axis, I'm pretty sure, or no, it's the Y. Okay, I adjusted both of it. You can copy these settings if you'd like, 0.08 and Y 0.1, and then the size I lowered it down to 0.8. And then if you guys want to smooth this out like I did, just make it seem more smooth, spline, all I did, click spline, transform, just drag it onto the spline, and click the zoom to fit option. And then over here, so the center, this is my spline for just the X and Y axes. You guys can copy these settings if you'd like. And then for the size, this is my what my spline looks like. Alright, and then that connects to a merge node, and then the merge 1 and merge 3 connect. And this one, I'm pretty sure it's the other guy, the middle-aged guy. Yep, right over here. So global in, same thing, 0, and then just whatever you want, just make sure it's more than the fusion comp. All the other default settings, and then I added a transform node to that. So I animated this, I'm pretty sure it's the exact same way. Yeah, so frame 154, X and Y, and then I keyframe the size at 1. Frame 260, I just adjusted it, made it symmetrical, and then size 0.8, the same thing. And then the spline is also the same, so you guys can just go back, rewatch it if you guys like. And yeah, and then that connects to another merge node, and then the merge 3 and 4 connect. And if you guys are following this exact tutorial, after you connect each merge node, you want to connect it back to media out. So you see how the merge is connected to the media out? You want to do the same thing. Alright, so now we got the 5 burgers right over here, as you guys can see. It animates, it zooms in. So I added this global in 0, and then make sure you set your global out to 180 because we don't want it to last the whole clip, you know. So transform 2, So this is what I used to animate it. So I started the animation at frame 4. I keyframed the size at 0, make sure it's 0. And then I went to frame 29 and I increased it to 0.22. And then I added a camera shake. You guys can copy these settings, pause the video, copy it. Frequency methods, sine, filter method, linear, and then edges, canvas. And then I added a color correction to it, just make it stand out more. All I did was increase the gain to 1.51. That's pretty much it. And then I connected it to a merge node, and then merge 4 and merge 5 connect. And if you guys want to copy the spline settings for the burger, this is what it looks like. Highlight it. That's what it looks like, so you guys can copy it if you like. Alright, so as you guys saw in the preview probably, the burgers, they're all the same, except everything's made the same except for the fact that it's in different positions, and the camera shakes are a little bit different in each. So all I did here was I highlighted it, okay? Or I didn't highlight the merge, I just highlighted these 4, Control C, and I Control V'd it, and then I just added it on top of this, and then I just connected it to the merge node. And then I did that 5 times, as you guys can see. These 5 right over here, they're the exact same thing. But then all I did was I just changed the X and Y values and then the camera shake. So let's go one by one. So for the second burger, the transform, over here the size. So at frame 0 it's 0, okay? And then frame 25 is 0.3. So I basically just adjusted it when it comes out. So as you guys can see, each one pops out a few frames after one another. And then it's the same spline for each, so you guys can just go back, copy the spline. And then the camera shake, it's a little bit different, so you guys can copy these settings. And then color correction is the same, merge, just a merge node. And for the burger 3, so this one is the top right one, and then the one before this was the top left, and then the first one was the middle one, by the way. So for the third one, so at frame 13, I keyframed the size at 0, and then frame number 38, I increased the size to 0.3, and these are the X and Y values for it. And I'm not sure if I showed the X and Y values for the one before this, so it's this if you guys want to copy it. And now we're going to go on to the fourth burger, so it's the bottom left. So the X and Y axes are over here, 0.36 for the X and 0.356 for the Y. And then I keyframed this at frame 13 at 0, size at 0. And then I went to frame number 38 and increased it to 0.3. And camera shake, it's this. You guys can obviously tweak it to however you'd like, but yeah, these are mine. And then for the last burger, the bottom right one, I keyframed the size at frame number 7 at 0, and then I went to frame number 32 and I increased the size to 0.3. And these are my X and Y axes, 0.6 and 0.35. And this is my camera shake for the last one. And this is the color correction, the same thing, just copy pasted it obviously. And then connect to a merge node. All the merges should be connected. And then over here, this is where the words come up. So around over here, 180, it starts coming in. Okay, so this one is for the word the. Okay, so I added a transform node, and then I started the keyframe. I started the animation at frame 189. So I keyframed the center at 0.2, 0.5, and then I went to frame 232, and then I adjusted the center to 0.2 and 0.7. And yeah, that's it for the transform. And this transform was just for the X and Y, right? It wasn't for the size. I added another transform node just for the size, so it's a little bit more organized. So the size at frame 199, I keyframed it at frame 199 at size 1.4, and then I went to frame 242 and increased the size to 1.08. And now I'll show the spline for the transform nodes. So for the X and Y, the transform 6, this is how my transform looks. Just these two. So that's my transform. Hopefully you guys can see it good. And then for transform 7, so this one's the size, so it's this right over here. We adjusted the merge, as you guys can see, the blend. So over here I went to frame 180, I blended it, so over here blend, I keyframed the blend at 0, okay, so it's not visible at all. And then I went to frame 229 and I increased the blend to 0.352. And then make sure your burn in is set to 0.126 or somewhere around there, just make sure it looks good. And then this is the spline for merge 12 right over here. And then we'll move on to the next word. So all I did for this, I just copy pasted it basically, but if you guys want to go step by step, here it is. And by copy paste I mean I copy pasted it and then I changed the X and Y values, the word, all of that. So yeah. And I'm not sure if I went over the font or anything, but here, font it's OSP din, and then din, color black, size 0.1485, and that's pretty much all I did for that. Over here, size X 1.1, size Y 1.496, and yeah, that's it. And then it's just obviously the same text for the 3 words. Okay, now we'll move on to the second text, which is perfect. The size is the same right over here. Okay, so I started it at frame 199. Okay, I keyframed the center X at 0.4, center Y at 0.57. And then I went to frame 244 and I increased the X and Y values to 0.4 and 0.7. And then I added another transform node, obviously for the size, as I previously mentioned. So I started it at frame 199 at 1.4, and then size 1.08 at frame 124 or 142. And just to let you guys know, for these transform 7s, for the size, I set the pivot to 0.728, so it zooms in directly to that point. So as you guys can see here, the pivot is basically this X. I'll use this one. So it zooms in right over here towards the middle kind of, right? Because if you don't, it's basically what it's going to do, it's going to make it really rigid and really just like staggered. So you guys don't want to do that. You guys want to have the pivot value so it zooms directly to that Y position. And the merge 12, this one's a little bit different. So at frame 190 I keyframed the blend over here at 0, and then I went to frame 239 and keyframed the blend to 0.352. I'm pretty sure it's like the exact same, yeah, pretty much the exact same, except it's a little bit more spread out. So make sure you guys keyframe it at this exact point, 190, and then frame 239 0.3, and then burn in, make sure it's the same, so 0.26, 0.126, or whatever you put it to. And then it's the same spline for all of them, so if you guys do want to go back to it, just go back to where the spline was. And then for the next one, answer, I basically left timer spaces 1 2 3 4 5 10 11 12, so 12 spaces, so 1 2, okay, so it's equally spread out, same text fonts obviously. And then for the transform, for the center, frame 209 I keyframed the center X and Y at 0.59 and 0.57, and then I went to frame 252 and brought it up to 0.5 and 0.7, and then I added another transform for the size, and make sure the pivot is set to 0.728 on this one. Okay, and then for the size, you're going to go to frame 209, keyframe the size at 1.4, and then go to frame 252 and keyframe the size at 1.08. And then for the merge node, we're going to go to frame number 200. We're going to keyframe the blend at 0 at frame 200. And then we're going to go to frame 249, keyframe it and change the value to 0.352, and burn in, same as always, 0.126. Okay, so that's it for the words. Now this one is the light leaks background, I'm pretty sure. If we go over here, as you look at the background right over here, so we'll give it a sec. You see the light leak, how it gets brighter, and you guys can probably see it in the preview too if you go back and watch how you see the light leak in the background. So this is basically that. So I added it, and then I added a transform I just didn't do anything to it, so you don't need to add a transform. And then I added a color correction. You guys can copy these if you'd like. You guys might want to copy these because the original light leak was a little bit different in color, so yeah. And then if we go back to the median for the light leak, the actual video, the global in, make sure you set it at 200, and global out, whatever, just make sure it's past the fusion clip. Make sure it fits the whole rest of the fusion clip. And then trim 0 out 192, 199. And then you want to hold the last frame for 132 frames. It's optional, but you don't have to do it. And then for merge 15, right over here where I animated the blend of it. So at frame 243, I keyframed the blend at 0, and then I went to frame 270, and then I put it to 0.669, or you guys can just round it to 0.7 if you guys want, but I'll keep it at this. And I'm pretty sure there's no spline for this. It's fine without it. It's not a big deal. And then this one is the big burger. So this one, as you guys can see, so this one starts the animation at frame 80. Okay, it starts coming up. So I added a transform node, another transform node, and then a color corrector connected to merge. So I'll start with the transform 3 first. So I started it at frame 80. Make sure you copy these x and y coordinates. So x at 0.5 and then y at negative 0.8. And then keyframe the size at 2.59. And then you want to go to frame 180 and adjust the x and y values, or just the y values. And then for the size, or no, sorry, for this one's not for the size. This transforms for the size. So this one you don't need to keyframe the size. You can just unkeyframe it by clicking it again so it turns gray. If you guys want to see the spline for this transform for the burger, so it's this right over here. It's this one. You guys can copy it. And then for transform 5, so I also animated this one. So at frame 154, I keyframed the x and y at the default setting, and the size at 1, the default. And then I went to frame 260 and I adjusted the y value to 0.384, and then I brought the size down to 0.8. Now if we check out the spline for this one, so this is the spline for the center x, center y, so the x and y values. And then this is the one for the size. And color correction, so this is my color correction. So as you guys can see over here, how it's like nice and bright. Then as you start here, it starts getting darker and darker. As you guys can see over here, it gets pretty dark compared to here. So that's what we're going to be doing in this color correction node. So the default is this. Okay, make sure you guys set your default to this. So gain 1.83, and that's pretty much it. And then you want to keyframe the gain on frame 180, keyframe the gain, and go to frame 238 and bring the gain down to 0.78. I don't think I did a spline for this. Yeah, I didn't do a spline. If you guys want, you can just highlight it and click S on your keyboard. And then that connects to a merge node, obviously. And then this one is the McDonald's image, I'm pretty sure. That banner right over there. So what I did over here, so set your median into 0 because it's going to be down. It's going to be at the bottom anyways, right? So there's really no point. And then I'll just make sure it passed the fusion comp. And then I added a transform node. So at frame 226, I keyframed the x and y, and I only adjusted the y to negative 0.5, so it's not shown on screen. And then I went to frame 276 and adjusted the y value to 0.4. And then I went to frame 364, so the last one, and adjusted the y value to 0.5. So the spline for this one is right over here. This one's a little bit more complicated. I'll zoom in. So these are the first two keyframes. So that's the first keyframe. This is the second keyframe. And then this is the third. It doesn't have to be exact, so just make sure it looks good on your end, and you should be fine. And then for the color correction, we're going to start it at, we started it at frame 272. So we keyframed it, and then we set the saturation to 1.05. And the gain to 0.94, and then I keyframed this too because we're going to adjust it. And then I went to frame 317. We bumped down the saturation a bunch to 0.3, and then the gain to 0.66. And also make sure your contrast is set at 0.95 as default before you start keyframing. Or if you already have keyframed it, just go to your first frame and then just change your contrast. Okay, so once you've done that, you're good. I don't think I adjusted the spline for this for color correction. Yeah, so I don't adjust splines for color correction. And then I added a box blur for the ending part where it kind of blurs. So I started it at frame 285, strength set at 0. Make sure your same horizontal vertical is selected, number of iterations at 1, and border type reflect. You can play around with it if you like, but reflect works best for me. And then I went to frame 334 and I brought the strength up to 0.299, and I might have splined it. Nope, I didn't. Okay, yeah, I'll just spline it anyways. Click S and you're good. It doesn't really matter, but yeah. Okay, and then for the text over here, as you guys can see, speedy service system. You guys can copy the text if you like. Font Oswald, make sure it's bold. Size 0.0472, make sure the color is white. Tracking, so I keyframed the tracking, which is basically the spread of each individual letter. So I framed 284. I keyframed the tracking at 1.08. Now I went to frame 286. Then I adjusted it to 1.197. And then I went to frame 364, so the last one again, and I increased the tracking to 1.1. Or I decreased the tracking to 1.1. And make sure your line spacing is set at 1.05. So that's it for the text node. Now we'll move on to the transform node for this. So there's quite a few keyframes for this, so we'll start at the start. We'll start with the center X and Y keyframes, and then we'll look at the size keyframes afterwards. So center X, we started at go to frame 284, keyframe center X and Y at these values 0.4 and 0.47, 0.47, 0.47, and then go to frame 294, so 10 frames ahead, and then adjust the X and Y coordinates, X and Y axes to these ones right over here, and then go to frame 301, and then adjust the X and Y to 0.48 and 0.49, and then go to frame 306, set your X and Y to 0.8, 0.49, then go to frame 322, adjust it to 0.49 and 0.52, and then go to frame 335 and adjust it to 0.49 and 0.54, and then go to your last frame and adjust the X to 0.5 and Y to 0.57. Now we can do the size. So the size isn't that much, so we at the start go to frame 283. We're going to keyframe the size at 0.69, and then go to the end, the last frame, and put the size up to 1.44, and then set your angle as default to 1.4, edges canvas, filter method linear. And then for the spline, for the transform, go to spline right over here. All I did for this was pretty simple. I just highlighted all of it. Oops, I just highlighted. Okay, let me unhighlight that. Where is it? Yeah, so right over here. Okay, oh no, that was part of it. Okay, so I just highlighted all of it just like that and just clicked S on my keyboard. Okay, so these are as default. Okay, but these ones over here, I adjusted these a little bit more so you guys can copy these last two frames. And then for the size, these are my keyframes for the size, so these, you can copy these for the size. And yeah, and that connects to a merge node. All the merge nodes connect. Then over here I added a image plane 3D, so this is basically for the 3D effects and stuff. So I added an image plane 3D, merge 3D, render 3D. Remember, you guys can just add these by clicking control space and searching up whichever one you want. So if you want render 3D, it's right over here. And then once you added all that, you want to add a camera 3D and connect it to the merge 3D. And for this one, all I did was adjust the Z value, which is the zoom, to 1.32. And then the render connects to the merge, and then the merge connects to the media out. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it for the tutorial. If you guys did like it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you guys do have any more recommendations on what tutorials I could do, please leave it in the comments or DM me on Discord. And yeah,